This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. Jill Schiefelbein, lightning round. Bourbon or scotch?
Bourbon.
Spicy or mild?
Depends on the context.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla.
French or Italian?
Italian.
Some people would answer that, yes, please. But either way, welcome to The Speaking Show.
Thank you so much for having me, David.
It is super exciting to have you here. You know, we could probably do like 5 episodes back to back. You're super busy, so you don't have time. I'm just sitting here. I would love to talk to you about all of these things. I'd love to talk to you about your amazing, fantastic book,
Yay!
Dynamic Communication, your entrepreneurial journey, your academic background. You know, I'm going to start someplace fun.
Okay.
Because as a speaker, as an author, as a thought leader, you had a fairly unique experience recently, which is to co-chair and organize a conference with other speakers and consultants and trainers, going all the way through the speaker submission process, selecting some big-time, big names, the main stage people. And I know you had some help from our friend Corey Perlman. You had a committee, you had a team that was vetting some of the breakout speakers. But at the end of the day, the buck ended with you. So talk about that just from the speaker's perspective. What should speakers know when we're dealing with these poor saps that have 1,000 details and 1,000 priorities as they're organizing a big 1,500, 2,000 person conference? What lessons do you think came out of that for you as a speaker?
Oh my goodness, that's a good question. I think the first thing is how often we think of ourselves first and not the client. And it's not that it's necessarily wrong, right? Like, of course, we're thinking about the client in some way, shape, or form. But when we see a proposal, a submission for proposals, our first thought is, okay, how can I get this filled out the fastest with what I already have and kind of moving forward with that instead of taking the time to actually cater that proposal in a meaningful way to the client, in this case, to the theme of the conference, to the outcomes that the co-chairs in my case were asking for. And there was a huge difference between people who literally copied and pasted stuff that they'd already written from a website or from other marketing material versus those who took the time, which isn't much. You can copy and paste and change 20% of it, and it's going to make a massive difference. It's not starting from scratch, but it was really telling the people who took the time to do that versus those who didn't. Because if you're not even willing to take that 20% little extra effort now, I don't want you speaking at my conference. And it made me hang my head in shame a little bit because admittedly, I have done that before. I have done the copy paste with little or no editing, and I felt like a jerk. So seeing this happen was a reflection back on me. And I'm like, well, I will never, ever, ever do it again. So that's number one. Number two is video really does set people apart. Because you are one person on paper, you are a different human in the flesh, and in the intermediary is the video. So those speakers who submitted a video along with their proposal had a higher, much higher percentage of being selected than those who didn't. So you can see here, I have my fabulous little studio set up here in New York City. It was a major investment I made in 2018 to rent my own space here because in New York, you also live in studios as a single person. So you can't live in one and run one at the same time. And just the level of professionalism I can bring to every single proposal, every single client, promotional videos for events, all of that is just tenfold now that I'm in this space. So it's what little things can you be doing that will set yourself apart? Just the video is still setting you apart. Now, if you want to do great video, that really puts you in a different category.
By the way, that's our 4th show, is all of your expertise around video. Like I'm saying, dude, we're going to have to, we'll do a weekly thing here. It'll be great.
All right.
So the video submissions you're talking about now, were these for the main stage people or even the breakout people submitted video?
The breakout people. So we, for the first time in this submission process for breakout sessions, even, which is a huge honor to get accepted for that when you're asked to serve your own community. I mean, when you're asked to provide your knowledge to your peers and colleagues, it's a gift. Like, that's a huge thing. And even in that process, we made a video optional. But I'll tell you, the ones who said, forget that, that's not optional, it's mandatory, are the ones that rose above. And I'll tell you, so many times we read someone's description and we were like, not really. Oh, they submitted a video, so we have to watch it because we said we would. We watched a video and we're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's go back and read this again now having seen that. And people got accepted who never would have if they had just submitted the text. When it came to submitting or selecting the big main stage speakers, we had an idea of the type of content we wanted to curate, and then what is it from our perspective, and then how any speaker can approach any meeting planner. What is it about you that's online that's going to make them secure in their choice of choosing you? Do they have access to a full keynote that you've done similar to the one that they want you to give that will give them some comfort in choosing you? Because everyone has a boss. You might be your own boss, but everyone has a boss. And we're always worried about how our boss is going to think and feel. I mean, I have daily inner monologues on a regular basis, but you have to impress someone. And as a speaker, if you can make someone confident and secure in that choice, then you're going to be in a better spot.
For sure. And, I often say that it's not the best speaker that gets hired. It's the safest speaker that gets hired, right? The least risk, the best fit, all of those things. So the videos for the main stage speakers, obviously we have our full professional demo, or like you said, the full length keynote. For the kind of breakout, optional, but really not optional, kind of a smart strategy, your initial approach might be at a conference to do a breakout. Were these people sitting at their desk? Were they doing excerpts from a workshop style program? What kinds of videos were you getting submitted?
So people had to submit a video of them in action in some way, shape, or form, just really to prove that, yes, I've stood in front of a room of people and spoken before.
So not just like what you and I are doing sitting at our desk.
No, but that was something different. And I honestly didn't care about those. I cared about if they made a video that was 2 minutes or less, that was our criteria, that told me more about what they were going to do for my audience. That's what mattered. And some of those were just sitting at a desk, just like we are doing right now. Quick, get the phone up, quick, do it. Fine. It was still better than those who didn't have it. Other ones got elaborately creative and set stages and scenes and, use props based on our theme. That was really cool as well. But I will tell you, those things stood out. So whenever I apply for anything again in the future, if that meeting planner has a theme, I'm going all in because those things get remembered.
How about that? That's amazing. Well, let's change gears and let's talk about one of my favorite books, Dynamic Communication. I'll tell you, my favorite part of this book is in the foreword when Jay Baer says, read David Newman's chapter. That was pretty awesome. I mean, it's like a three-way love fest right there. So here we are. We're both in Jill's book. Jay writes the foreword and says, by the way, make sure to flip ahead to David Newman's chapter. This is why it's fun to have cool friends.
It is.
This is why.
My favorite part about the foreword, now, of course, I love you, David, which is why you are also in the book. But I think my favorite part of the foreword, which was a total jaw-dropping, almost tear-inducing, brilliant moment for me, was when Jay said, I've never thought about organizing a book in this way. I'm like, ooh, yes.
Absolutely right. Totally love it. Well, so let's talk about this book. And I want to talk about Jill pre-book and Jill post-book. And what people might not know, but are about to find out, is that you have this fabulous academic background. You've been published. You've written textbooks, and all of that is great. My guess is that you are not leveraging that as directly before this book came out, before Dynamic Communication came out, as you were then able to leverage this book after it came out. So let's almost for a second pretend that all the great academic work and the textbook and so forth were not there. Jill, pre-big book, commercial book, bookstore book, as I call it. What did you find as your, oh my gosh, you see that? I just dinged and I just made
Talk about non-dynamic communication.
I know, this is terrible. We're keeping that in because I'm so embarrassed now. What was your ability to book business, get gigs, get buyers' attention before the book? And tell me how that has changed now that you have this mainstream bookstore book.
I think it's interesting, and I'm going to answer your question, but in a roundabout way, because of course I can't just follow your direction here. A lot of people say having a book is mandatory if you want to be a speaker, and I would completely disagree with that. Having a good book that you know how to market, that you know how to sell, and that you know how to leverage is mandatory. Having a books for a book's sake, just throwing together some self-published piece of you know what, and even though we're like, oh, it's not a piece of you know what, no, most of your self-published books, I'm sorry, they are not that good. And it's because you never had an editor, you never had a formatter, you never had a designer. There were no other sets of eyes except maybe you and a couple of your peers looking at that. And it's not the same quality. Now, there are rare exceptions of people who are just superhumans who can go through that process and do it well. But even those have hired people to help them in that process. So number one, if you're going to put out a book and take the time to do it, be sure it's something that you're going to be damn proud of. Because if you are not, it's not going to do anything for you. If it's just something that you have to push and use as a credibility piece, it's going to fall flat. So me before the book, I think it was harder for me before the book to explain the many ways that I could help a client than it is after the book. And I still struggle with that a little bit because in dynamic communication, 27 strategies to grow, lead, and manage your business, it kind of puts you into, can you grow my business? Can you lead my business? Can you manage my business? So we get some silos. But what it has given me is the ability to go to any meeting planner, to anyone who's like, hey, I've heard about you and I've heard you're phenomenal. Like, what can you do for us? And for me, the answer is, well, I would love to talk to you about what your problems are, but we don't have time for that right now because maybe they just sent me an inquiry and I pick up the phone and call them. I'll say, but how about this? I'm going to send you my book. There are 27 different chapters in it, all of which could be made into separate individual programs or combined into a hybrid program. Take a look even just at the table of contents, and then we'll have a follow-up call about how we can best, pick these things out and customize something that's going to create a unique experience for the people in your audience or solve specific problems for your organization. Having that framework instead of a bulleted list, but in a published form that was vetted by a major national publisher that is in bookstores, that is online, it just lends a whole different air of credibility and it changes the conversation around it. Whereas before, I would have to be diving in super, super deep with people, or they were calling me for one specific thing that they had heard about from someone else.
Wow. I just was literally picking up your book and flipping through the table of contents as you were sharing that brilliant strategy of using that as a marketing tool and as a customization tool. What you just described, I think, is the secret sauce that so many speakers and consultants and experts are missing, which is specificity with variety. So let's unpack that for a minute because you are just a stone cold communications expert. When people hear communications expert, their mind goes to maybe a couple of things. Buyers, I'm talking about now. Mm-hmm. So buyers go, oh, okay, she's a presentation skills lady. Oh, no, she's the effective meetings gal. Oh, no, she's going to help us sell better. Oh, no, this is about leadership communication. And it could be some of those things. It could be all of those things. But this approach, when you say, listen, in this book, we're talking about face-to-face. We're talking about small group. We're talking about video. We're talking about webinars. We're talking about listening. We're talking about selling situations. We're talking about 27 different contexts for communicating effectively and smartly and
dynamically.
Communicating effectively and dynamically, to use Jill's keyword there. And then you say, which ones are most relevant for you? Tell me about your group. Tell me about your meeting. Tell me about past meetings. Tell me about what, where folks are struggling. Tell me what they might not need. So I love the fact that even the structure of the book is a customization tool for the speaking, training, coaching, and consulting that you want to do.
What's been great about it is when people come, they have an idea of what they want, right? And I am big on asking questions. In fact, my potential client calls, I just had one last Friday where said, listen, do you have at least 40 minutes to devote to this now? Because I have a lot of questions because I want to make sure whatever I suggest to you is actually going to meet your needs. And in order to do that, I need to understand your company structure. Well, this was with the sales engineering team, right? So for a cloud-based software service, and sales engineering interacts with lots of different constituencies. And I have to draw and map this out because that's how my mind works. But at the end of all this, I said, thank you. I have a pretty clear picture of where you're at. And the guy said, I don't think I've ever been asked that many specific questions about the structure of the organization and the interactions that take place in it. And number one, I take that as a massive compliment. And number two, I said, I ask you those questions because of the, 27 things that I could potentially talk about. I want to make sure that we're hitting the right ones because often someone comes to me and says, I want my sales engineers to be better presenters. Well, That's great. So you go look up a presentation skills trainer and you'll fix that wound with a bandage, right? But when you get a communication expert with vetted research, published, practical experience in all of these different areas, you start to see the bigger picture. And I tell them, listen, I can give you solid, just presentation skills trainers, but here's what's going to happen. They're going to be able to fix this issue, but it's not going to manifest in other areas. Here's a three-pronged approach. I'm suggesting da 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 da. So it just gives you vocabulary from which to pull customization around. And I think we have moved into the era, I know we've moved into the era where personalization and customization trump most things. And even if they don't in the practice of it, in the pitching of it, it still needs to.
Yeah, totally right. Totally spot on. Hey, this interview is a real moneymaker. If you're serious about ramping up your reach and revenue as a speaker, trainer, or expert, book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team. The link is doitmarketing.com/call. It will be the most valuable 45 minutes you invest in your speaking-driven business. Speaking of value, let's get back to the show. Let's change gears again because we're doing all 5 shows now. We're giving a preview of all the 5 shows that we're going to do over the next.
And then there's a voting poll, right? Which ones get kicked off the island?
Totally.
Which ones come back? Okay.
Totally. So next topic, ding, ding, ding. YouTube domination with Jill Schiefelbein.
Dun, dun, dun.
So your YouTube channel is Dynamic Jill?
I wish. So here's something you need to know about
already.
YouTube.
I've already screwed up.
This is actually good because anyone who's in earlier stages listening to this, where you haven't customized your YouTube URL yet, don't freaking do it around a brand unless you are 120,000% positive that in 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, that brand will be the exact same. And I screwed that up.
Screwed the pooch.
Now that I'm like approaching on my channel, almost 1 million views just on my channel, then I have millions of syndicated views in other outlets. I still am under Impromptu Guru, which is the first name of my very first business. And now I'm screwed because that is what it is, even though Dynamic Jill is where I'm at everywhere else on social. And it's so frustrating. So number 1 lesson, brand under your name. That would be my 2 cents there.
There you go. Now, but people need to go onto YouTube, look under Impromptu Guru, and they will see your massive library of high value videos that do have hundreds of thousands of views. And like you said, 1 million plus by the time people are probably listening to this. You started with no subscribers. You started with no views. And at some point you had that first video that you posted. So assuming that we're all little babies, and maybe we've already made some mistakes. By the way, I'm in the same boat. My YouTube channel is not Do It Marketing. It's Unconsulting, which was my first brand. You know, here's how to say, hey, you know, we got to talk to the guys at Alphabet, the guys and the gals. Say, listen, Alphabet people, one quick change, allow us to change our YouTube URL.
Believe me, I've actually spoken to some people at YouTube and gotten kind of up the ranks. And I'm like, I'm approaching even almost 1 million views and they won't even do it for me. And I'm like, wow. Well, I'm just chump change. What the heck?
Right. So we're starting at either, 0 or we're starting at a couple videos. They have a couple dozen views, 100 views, 500 views. You used YouTube very intentionally to build your platform and to grow your presence and to share your content and to build your tribe. Talk about just some of the basic blocking and tackling that we might get started with down that path.
Sure. So my whole story, I put my first YouTube video up in 2009. And at the time, I was a pioneer in the online education space. When people say I've been working with online classes and digital stuff, I have since 2003. That's over 15 years now. So I played with this early on. And in 2009, finally got the guts, which is what it took then, to post a video and make it public. And I did maybe 2 or 3 videos in total before 2010. And I'm like, are people actually watching these? What are they doing? I made like a few hundred views here and there, whatever. Then it got up to, okay, well, 2012 comes along. In June, I decide I am going to change things. I had just started my business. I was initially doing presentation skills coaching for executives and athletes. And I thought, well, what better way to market than to put myself on video? Because if I can't do that on video, why the heck would someone ever hire me? So I made this 52 video series. And in making this 52 video series, I decided I was going to drip out 1 video once a week for a year. And so that drip out started in September 2012. Well, when I did that, I got to the point where those 52 videos after a year had about 60,000 views, which I know a lot of people would be thrilled with, except for the fact that I had invested $5,000 in this shoot, which back then was a ton of money for me to invest in something. I mean, it's a lot of money to invest in anything that doesn't pay it off. But then 2012, Jill, that was like, holy crap, a lot of money that didn't pay off. And I decided that I would do anything and everything I could to make that investment work for me. So I dug down behind the analytics and learned everything I possibly could about YouTube data. And so what I learned was, number one, your channel needs to have consistency. So I looked at the 52 beautiful videos I had. I looked at those 3 random videos that had now, by the way, accumulated about 30,000 views on their own merit because the other videos drove watching of those. I decided, number one, to unlist those videos completely. So the views disappeared. So I dropped down from 6 figures of views to way back down. And that was a hard thing because our egos like to see that number high. So I took away, I think it was about 38,000 views, took those videos off. So my channel, my brand looked consistent and professional. Then what I did was I changed 3 things, and I learned to change 3 different things around YouTube. Number 1 was the titles. Number 2, I made unique descriptions for every video. And number 3, I made a universal description for every video. And in the universal description, it was copied and pasted into every video, had a keyword heavy paragraph that explained what the channel was about. Not who I am, not what my business does, what the channel is about. I changed the titles to answer questions. So how do you calm your nerves before public speaking? Instead of, here's an activity called Do the Penguin. You know, that case in point, I loved the name Do the Penguin because you're taught in English class growing up, like sexy titles attract or make people curious. Well, to a human, you see a public speaking channel and you see Do the Penguin, you might be like, what the heck? And click on it out of curiosity. Well, to a computer, who is actually the thing searching the data when people search for public speaking videos, the computer sees Do the Penguin and they think of a couple different things, one of which is NC-17 acts with animals. And you don't want to be showing up alongside of those things. So what you do is redo the titles. Change that title at 1,200 views on Do the Penguin to Calm Your Nerves Before Public Speaking. Now it's over 90,000 views. Just from subtle, simple shifts. But you have to realize that your videos may communicate to humans, but before a human can find them, they have to communicate with a computer.
So the search engine optimization is really, really key. I mean, so it's 2 things. It's exactly what you said about the book. You can't put crappy video out there. It can't be crappy content or crappy production values. But once we're doing some good videos that have really good content that we're proud of, SEO is the secret sauce that pours gas on the fire.
Yeah, it helps. You have to be consistent everywhere with that. And in fact, when I released 27 different videos, one per each chapter around the book, like David, you and I have a video out there together, those videos, because they weren't as coherent with public speaking, have actually gotten way less views on my actual channel. In syndication, they've gotten a lot more views, but on my actual channel, less, because the computer says, wait, dynamic communication, public speaking, are these things related? Well, yes, they are. But to a computer, there's not that easy cause and effect right there.
Super quick commercial break. Isn't this interview amazing? If you'd like to get more ideas on how to start or grow your speaking business fast, pop over to our free training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. So gear change again. Let's go to the world of online education and online learning and online courses. I know that one of your expertises, as you just mentioned, since 2003, is online learning, digital learning, and so forth. A lot of speakers and trainers and coaches, they want to do the same thing with online courses that they want to do with their book and with their YouTube channel. Let me just throw up some me at my desk videos, 3-4 minutes, bundle that up, open up a portal, and sell them for $4.97. No design. No instructional design, no, educational methodology, no sequencing, no reinforcement, no validation of any kind. What are some mistakes that we're making in this arena, and what are some quick tips that we can get our heads out of where they shouldn't be?
Well, that making a bunch of videos, throwing them up without having a master plan and with only having an outline, that's an amateur move. Now, you may be able to make some money off of that amateur move, but in the long term, is it going to serve you well? I doubt it. Very few times throughout a year, actually. In fact, only 3 to 4 times max a year, I will take on a curriculum design client still, just because it keeps me fresh in the space and I enjoy it when I believe in someone's content. So right now I'm working with this woman who was a C-suite leader at a major pharmaceutical company who now wants to teach other women in organizations what she considers her unwritten rules of women's leadership to help women in corporate life. Something that for many obvious reasons, I'm like, okay, this is good. So that process involves not only, okay, here's all this content, let's vomit it out, but then stepping back and looking at it into what goals, what learning objectives do we want someone to accomplish? Just because I like telling an SEO, search engine optimization story, doesn't mean it needs to be in an online learning program if it doesn't help someone tie directly into a goal. So you have to start with the individual goals or objectives in mind. Then you need to outline the steps that it will take to reach those goals. And then in those steps, what content do you need to meet all of that stuff in the steps? I mean, that's a very basic explanation of learning objectives. I actually think I have a free, I don't know, some tutorial out there online or Vimeo about learning objectives. If you remind me, I can send it to you so you can
Yes,
link it.
please do. And we'll
It's
have that in the
like
show notes.
5 years old right now, but it's still relevant.
Sure.
So it's just really being cognizant of what goes into it, because if you do things out of order, it can confuse people more than it can help people. Or people spend all this time watching all this content and don't really have anything actionable at the end of it. And so that's what's really frustrating to me is when we don't tie every piece of content needs to audition for a place in helping someone meet a goal or objective. If it doesn't help, you could still have it there, but put it in a supplementary folder that's, hey, extra information on this that you might find useful. Fantastic. But it's not part of that core curricular stream.
And then the courses, this is kind of an 800-pound gorilla or whatever the other cliche, the elephant in the room, or an 800-pound elephant, which is lean, by the way.
Yeah, that's a really skinny elephant.
A lot of people that sell into the corporate market, right? They want to get into the Apples, the Amazons, the Googles, the Merrill Lynches, the Procter & Gambles. They're tying their star to, I'm going to have an online course. I'm going to sell thousands and millions of copies. Now, you and I know that some online courses are sold to individuals. So an online course for yoga teachers, an online course for photographers, an online course for speakers, an online course for whatever. That's cool. That's kind of a business to consumer model. Are companies buying online courses? Are they licensing vast quantities of licenses from people like you and me?
Yes, they are. But you have to be able to work within their systems, which is also a constraint that a lot of people don't think about. So when you're building something up, you pick a great platform, you think, oh, this is fantastic. You want to sell to a big corporation and get multiple licenses. They say, yes, we want to do this. And you say, great, here's a platform. No. They want the stuff hosted internally. They want it within their platform. So whatever you're building out, you need to make sure that it's done in a way that can be easily exportable and importable. Well, normally that's called in the online learning world a cartridge. Make sure you can get a course cartridge from one platform to whatever thing is internal from them. And then the licensing does become an issue because now your content is hosted on their servers in their space, and you have to go on trust in some way that after a year, it's going to be renewed and people aren't going to access it. So there's lots of different constraints. And in a short period of time, I won't get into all of them, but those are some of the things that you tangle with. But if someone from a corporation is going to license your content, number one, they're not just going to come out of nowhere and find you and your content and license it. This is going to be based on a relationship you've built up over a long period of time. And they're likely going to, at the very, very least, want your content white labeled, which means it's branded for them. Maybe their CEO jumps on and does a video at the beginning of the course, etc. And maybe there's interviews with people from the organization in the course. But they're going to want some type of customization. They also may ask you, instead of licensing something you've already created, if you reshoot and do the whole thing just for them, and they set you up with a studio and they do all of that. So there's lots of different options in there. But if you haven't started with a solid framework for your curriculum in the first place, none of that's going to matter.
Fantastic. Last entire show topic. I'm telling you, man, there's like 5 shows in one. You guys should be paying extra for this, you podcast people. Part of the reason that you and I are talking beyond the fact that we've been friends for years and years and years, is that you and I sat down in Austin, Texas, and you whipped out a notebook. And on this notebook, you sketched out the content distribution and repurposing plan that you recommend for speakers and experts. And specifically, you recommended to this speaker, this expert who's sitting on the other side of the chair here. And you said, okay, it's going to be podcast, it's going to be video, it's going to be tweetables, it's going to be a written blog, a video blog. You're going to have audio version, video version, hybrid version. You're going to put this on Pinterest, put it on Instagram. There's like 17 different ways that you can slice and dice and repurpose and really I look at it like a traffic cop. That you're simply loading up the truck and then the truck is making deliveries all over town. And YouTube is a town and Facebook is a town and your blog is a town and your podcast is a town. And so we're just making deliveries. And give us a little bit of insight into that content creation and content strategic repurposing and slicing and dicing that you're so brilliant at helping your clients with.
Wow, that was in Austin in 2016.
That's right.
Over margaritas at this outdoor patio. Oh my gosh, I can't even see the table. That was the first time I think I actually had sketched that out too. And now it's like a staple in everything I do.
So that means that you owe me a bourbon and I owe you a bourbon.
Yeah, right? More bourbon, more margaritas. That's okay, anyway. So thank you for that memory lane. That may have been the first time I drew that out. So what happens is you create one valuable piece of content, right? So let's take this podcast, for example. We've now had 5 different topic areas. So let's use that as an example, right? So we have this podcast and now you're listening to it in its audio form. Okay, great. That's one piece of content in one format. Well, what you can do is then I tell everyone I work with, and I do this for everything I do, you get that audio recording, and we're doing it as video also. So always record with video if you can. Send that to a company like rev.com or temi.com and get either $1 per minute or 10 cents a minute done by a computer transcription of what was done. Then you divide that transcript up into, in this case, 5 different topics or 5 different questions that were asked. Now, for each and every one of those, you have a mini audio bite. So you could have a mini-sode or a mini podcast, if you will. You have the video from that segment. So that can be a standalone video that you put on YouTube, Vimeo, upload native to Facebook, Instagram in a minute form or less, LinkedIn. So there's 5, 6, 7 times 5. That's 35 pieces just from one podcast. And that's just on the video. Then you can do that same strategy with blog posts. You copy and paste the transcript, edit about 20% of it, boom, blog post. There's 5 more pieces of content. Make that into your email newsletter in creative ways, taking highlights, boom, 5 more pieces of content. Screenshots from the conversation or nice graphics that you post with quotes that came directly from the show, that could be a dozen more pieces of content. You just copy and paste those sentences into an image generator and go, 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 and so on and so forth. So literally, I think that was just like 50 pieces in a couple minutes that you could get from a single podcast. So when people say I don't have time to create content, that's BS. You have an hour to create one piece, make a system that will then create all those other pieces for you.
Totally love it. And then, of course, then there's 5, 6, 7 places to share it, right? You take the video, the audio, the blogs, the podcast, the tweetables, the graphic quotes, and that goes on Facebook, that goes on LinkedIn, that goes on Google Plus, if anyone is still on Google Plus, I'm not sure.
Like
weird.
MySpace,
Yeah, MySpace. MySpace. I used to say, I'm not sure what these kids are talking about with, the Spacebook and the MyFace, and I'm not sure why all these social things are so big now, but I guess they are.
Yeah,
well, Jill Schiefelbein, thank you. I'm going to have 2 final questions for you.
Oh, goodness.
The second question is going to be, how can people get connected and stay connected to Jill World? And we'll cover that in a second.
Okay.
If people were to take one critical concept from our conversation today, what would you hope it would be?
Customization in whatever you do is crucial. Don't just be a one-trick pony. Be able to customize that pony and make it do lots of different tricks at different times for different people.
We used to say content is king or queen. Now customization is king or queen.
Yeah, you can make that into a nice little meme with my face on it.
There you go. Right, with Jill going. All right, my friend. How do people stay connected, get connected to you, your book, your website, all your goodies, all your resources, all your smarts?
Oh, you're the best. At Dynamic Jill, pretty much anywhere in the social sphere. It's that easy. My last name is Schiefelbein. It's awkwardly long and hard to spell with E-I-I-E. Just Dynamic Jill. And the book is available at bookstores, but also especially, and it's cheapest right now, on Amazon and also on Kindle. So definitely get it. It's designed so that you can pick it up and in 5 minutes have an actionable strategy, put it down, and well, maybe you never look at it again because you got money's worth, or you could pick it up on another day, 5 more minutes, and get another one.
Boom. There it is, my friend. Well, you're coming back at least 4 more times. So I'm just going to say, until next time, you're awesome. And thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Great to be here.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.